Welcome back. Thanks again for joining us for another episode as we continue studying the Word of God together. We're glad you're with us, and if you're following along with us in Scriptures, we're in the book of Daniel. We're going to jump into Daniel chapter 11 here to give you a little understanding of the context that's going on. We just got done talking about Daniel's prayer of this spiritual warfare that took place as he's gaining these final prophecies, and now we get into chapter 11. Now, the key to remember is, and it's actually placed in here, specifically for some certain reasons. So I was reading this a little earlier today, and the details of the first 35 verses of chapter 11 line up so distinctly to our human history, our world history, that sometimes historians will go back and look and think this isn't prophecy, this is history. This is just a section of history. Well, the reason we know that not to be true is Daniel clarifies in the first verse his age, or the time when this was the second year of Darius. So he clarifies when he wrote this, giving clarity to the fact that this is not history we're looking at. This is prophecy we're looking at. Again, for us, history. For them, it was prophecy, things that would not take place for a long period of time after Daniel. So that's one of the things I love about when you study these things is some of it has already happened, some of it is yet to happen. And why? As we've said more than once, one, for a lot of reasons, but one of the primary reasons for us we can look back that we gain, one, it was all history, it was all prophecy. Why is it done? Because it's all prophecy for Daniel at the time. What benefit does it bring to us today? It brings a huge benefit because we can look back at the fact that it was prophecy, and now we can see that in grave detail, this was fulfilled. And so, yet there's still stuff. Moving verse 36 on, you really begin to see a different prophecy, a different future, what is still future for us today. Kind of remember there's two little horns, and that's kind of what we're looking at here. The one in our human history, the one in our, what I believe to be future, still at that point. And we can look at this and we can say the detail, the first 35 verses, gives us hope that we can look to the detail of the rest of the book. So what I'm going to do is a little different. We could walk through. I was reading through this and history and kind of breaking it down, and it would take us a longer period of time and, should we say, a couple episodes. You can actually walk through each verse of chapters, really verse 6 on to verse 35, and you can connect it to history that is still prophecy for them, but history for us. I'm not going to go through all 30 of the verses and do that. It just becomes an information dump. I'm going to do a bit of kind of a survey of the whole thing to give you a smaller glimpse, kind of a broader glimpse of what took place, so that you recognize, if you're a history buff at all, and if you study this, you can put some of the pieces together to see what's happening and what this is referring to. If you want to go into more detail, you can look up those times of history and you can see it. So I encourage you to read all of it if you want, maybe dig it out, find out more of the detail. But I'm going to give a bit of a broader view of this passage by only reading a few of the verses to give you an understanding of what's going on, to help you to see the historical connection to these verses. So we're going to start verses 1 through 4 for a little bit of context and to let us know when this was written, to help us to know that it was prophecy for Daniel. So we start in verse 1. It says, "As for me, in the first year," first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to confirm and strengthen him. And now I will show you the truth. So he is the first year of Darius. He's towards the end. He's a little older at this point. And now, so you get to see, you can go back and look at King Darius. You can look at the time that he reigned in his first year. It gives you an idea of the history. This proves to you that the rest of the information was prophecy, still future for Daniel. Verse 2, "And now I will show you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings shall arise in Persia, and the 4th shall be richer than all of them." Probably thinking of Xerxes, things of that nature. Begin to see a little bit of the future. Xerxes, who was married to Esther. Ultimately, probably this one of these kings was the one that sent Nehemiah back. So you get to see some of the other biblical connection to these things, but you could see Xerxes was the one married to Esther, and so you could see a little bit of the history connected to the Bible part of this. One is rich in all of them. Let's continue that verse. "And when he has become strong through his riches, he will stir up against all the kingdoms of Greece. Then a mighty king shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion and do as he wills. And as soon as he has risen, his kingdom shall be broken and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven. but not to his posterity, nor according to the authority with which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others beside these. So the great one that came up, Alexander the Great, who will ultimately end up ruling and being the greatest and conquer all of them. Again, this can all be seen in human history. Now, it mentions that this great king will have his kingdom be divided into 4 kings, not given to his posterity, not given to his children. So we see there, this is Alexander. These 4 come out of Alexander the Great's kingdom. You notice, if you know any history, and I looked this up today, 2 of his sons were killed in the Battle of Ipsus in 301 BC. So what ended up happening is they couldn't take the kingdom, so 4 of his generals took control and created 4 kingdoms, which became known as Macedonia, Asia Minor, Egypt, and Syria. This is where we get to verses 5 and 6, where we see a lot referenced in here, the king of the north and the king of the south, referencing really Egypt and Syria. We're going to jump into verse 5. Then the king of the south shall be strong, but one of his princes shall be stronger, and he shall rule, and his authority shall be a great authority. After some years they shall make an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement. But she shall not retain the strength of her arm, and he and his arm shall not endure. But she shall be given up, and her attendants, he who fathered her, and he who supported her in those times. So what you're going to see is it becomes a great long time struggle between what the Bible calls the kingdom of the south and the north, Egypt and Syria. In these days, women were often used, the daughters of kings were used kind of as a peace treaties, and they were, we've seen this in a lot of historical movie pieces, you've watched them and reading history, where daughter was given to a king as a wife. The goal was to create a treaty and a unity between these two. So the king, the father would not attack his own daughter's kingdom, and the husband promised not to do the same because now they're united in marriage, and they were hoping that this unity would bring peace between the 2 nations. In this particular case, the king of Syria north agrees to marry the daughter of the king of Egypt south. We see that in verse 5 and 6. This was fine until you realize that the king was actually already married. He divorces his wife and marries the younger daughter. His wife did not like that, ends up killing the daughter and her attendants. He takes back his wife, but then she ends up poisoning him. Through, again, a little more broader view of all the details going on. Then we see in verse 7, the murdered queen's brother decides to get revenge on the Syrians, and he actually wins. Verse 7 says, and from a branch from her roots, one shall arise in his place. He shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he shall deal with them and shall prevail. This battle was actually fought on Israel's soil. So beginning to see, again, you dig it out, you can see how some of these specifics could work out if you want to look up the names of all of these different people. I saw them this morning, but I chose not to write down all of the details. So in comes Antiochus the Great, or the king of the north, Syria. Again, broader view, Antiochus attacks Egypt with 75,000 men stomping right through Israel. Egypt responds with 73,000 men, 5,000 cavalry, and 73 elephants going again through Israel. Antiochus attacks again, and this time overcomes Egypt. Wanting to unite the 2 kingdoms, he gives his daughter Cleopatra to the king of Egypt, hoping to put a spy in the palace. That was his goal. The problem arose when the daughter Cleopatra falls in love with the king of Egypt and turns her back on her father. Now, in anger of all of this, Antiochus attacks the coastlands or Greece, but was stopped by the Roman armies. This made him so angry, he turned his anger toward his own people and attempted to plunder the temple of Jupiter. This angered his people so much that they murdered him. Antiochus was removed and forgotten. You see this being murdered and see the situation. Again, look at history, you can see all these details. In verse 20, we see Antiochus was replaced by Seleucus Philopator, the oldest son of Antiochus the Great, who was known for raising the taxes. His reign was not long, though, because he was poisoned. This is in verse 20. Then shall arise in his place one who shall send an exactor of tribute for the glory of the kingdom. But within a few days he was broken, neither in anger nor in battle. I ended up just being poisoned, being removed. Then enters Antiochus Epiphanes and was described as contemptible and vile in verse 27. He created more grief for Egypt, so these 2 kings decided to make a peace treaty. Both of them came to the table lying, fully intending to break the treaty. Verse 27, and as for those two kings, their hearts shall be bent on doing evil. They shall speak lies at the same table, but to no avail, for the end is yet to be at the time appointed. Now, you can continue and go through the verses we didn't read and get more detail on the names of the people. You can read further on, another 8 verses to verse 35, and get more historical detail about what you're seeing. I chose to bit of a survey of what you're looking at. One reason for time. Another one, it's a bit of an information dump if you're just going to look into more detail. If you're interested in the history, you can go back and look at it. I think the principle of what we're trying to see here, the accuracy of what Daniel has written, the fact that we can see from the beginning of the chapter that this is prophecy to him, history to us. And we can look at that. We can see, literally, you can go through each verse and attach history to it with detail. And which something I did this morning reading through one of the commentaries, and it was enjoyable to do. It was fun to see the intense detail that was given Daniel put that we now see as history. And it's on purpose. It's on purpose because, again, it was all prophecy for him, but we can see it as history, which means as we now begin to look to the different section of prophecy, to the future, what is later the Antichrist, we'll talk about next time, we'll begin to dig more detail in, and we can put trust. We can put trust in that information because the verses leading up to it have so much detail that what's coming, we can trust that those things will come with similar detail. Well, I hope this has encouraged you. I hope it just reminds you a little bit, maybe enjoy a bit to look at how what we now know as history was prophecy, is now fact, and it gives us a little more trust because we know that the history proves the Bible. We can see that. It's one of the reasons that if you say, can I trust the Bible without having to read, the Bible tells me to trust it, but how do I trust it without reading, without the Bible telling me? Because history proves it. You can read this and find that history proves the Bible to be true, which gives you more trust in the fact that what we have is not just a book of literature. It is the inspired Word of God that gives us something to hold on to. Well, I greatly appreciate the privilege to be part of your day. Hope it's a help. Stick with us as we continue to dig through the second half of chapter 11. We'll jump into chapter 12 as we look ahead into some prophecies. Some of them are a little more familiar to us as they're kind of the main points of future prophecy, and we'll look at that in Revelation, see how it connects, and what is still future for us today. Again, appreciate the time you've given us today. Hope you join us again next time.